What if everything we thought we knew about the Egyptian pyramids was wrong? New discoveries beneath the sands are unearthing a labyrinthine underworld, a subterranean network so vast it redefines history. Prepare to have your mind blown as we explore the forgotten world beneath these ancient wonders. Dare to descend into the unknown? Beneath the legendary pyramids, a subterranean network of unprecedented scale has been unearthed, a hidden world waiting to be explored. This isn't just a discovery, it's a paradigm shift that will forever change our understanding of ancient Egypt. In the vast, sun-scorched expanse of the Egyptian desert, where time itself seems to stand still, the Great Pyramid of Giza pierces the sky. For 4.5 millennia, it has been the undisputed heavyweight champion of human achievement, the last surviving wonder of the ancient world. Its scale is so immense, its construction so precise, that it has become more than a monument. It is the very definition of antiquity, the benchmark against which all other marvels are measured. We look upon it and believe we are seeing the pinnacle of a civilization's ambition. But what if that belief is wrong? What if the greatest architectural triumph of the ancient Egyptians was not a pyramid at all? What if another structure once stood on Egyptian soil? A building so vast, so complex, so utterly beyond comprehension that it made the Great Pyramid of Khufu look like a practice run. And what if the rediscovery of this lost colossus in our own time has been met with a coordinated and deliberate wall of silence? This is not a journey into myth or legend. It begins with the sworn testimony of the most credible eyewitness of the classical age, the man revered as the father of history, the Greek writer Herodotus. In the 5th century BC, Herodotus embarked on an epic journey through Egypt, a land already ancient in his time. He was a meticulous chronicler, a man who sought to separate fact from fable, to document the wonders he saw with his own eyes. And in the fertile oasis of the Fayum, in a region called Hawara, he encountered a building that shattered his perception of what was possible. His account, preserved for 2,500 years in his masterwork, The Histories, is not just a description, it is a proclamation of awe, a testament to a forgotten masterpiece that has haunted historians for centuries. He wrote with the gravity of a man who knew his words would be weighed against the wonders of his own Greek world. "This I have actually seen, a work beyond words. For if anyone put together the buildings of the Greeks and display of their labors, they would seem lesser in both effort and expense to this labyrinth." And then, the sentence that should have rewritten our history books: the labyrinth surpasses even the pyramids.
Let the weight of that statement sink in. Herodotus, who had just described the pyramids in painstaking detail, who understood their scale and the phenomenal effort required to build them, declared without hesitation that this other structure was superior. This was not hyperbole from a wide-eyed tourist. It was the considered judgment of a seasoned historian. He was describing a building that, in his expert opinion, represented a greater expenditure of labor and resources than the monuments that would define Egypt for the next 2.5 millennia. His description paints a picture of almost impossible scale and complexity. He details a single colossal building, enclosed by a massive outer wall. Within this enclosure lay 12 immense roofed courts, their gates facing one another in perfect symmetry. 6 oriented to the north and 6 to the south, arranged in 2 continuous, unbroken lines. This architectural procession of courts alone would have been a marvel. But the true wonder, the feature that gave the building its name, was what lay within. The labyrinth, Herodotus reported, contained an almost unbelievable 3,000 chambers. These rooms were not arranged in a simple multi-story block. They were divided into 2 distinct, mirrored levels, a design that speaks of a profound symbolic purpose. 1,500 of these chambers were built above the ground, and another 1,500 were excavated directly into the earth, forming a subterranean world directly beneath them. It was a structure that was as deep as it was high, a microcosm of the Egyptian worldview, with its earthly realm and its hidden underworld, the Duat. Herodotus was granted the rare privilege of exploring the upper levels, and his words convey a sense of profound, deliberate disorientation. He speaks of extremely intricate windings through the courts, which arose infinite wonder as he was guided through the complex. His journey was a dizzying architectural experience, a deliberate maze designed to impress and overwhelm the visitor. He describes passing from court to chambers, and from chambers to porches, to other roofed areas from the porches, and to other courts from the chambers. It was a nested reality of stone, a puzzle box of a building where each space opened into another, creating a sense of endless, interconnected complexity. The craftsmanship was as staggering as the scale. The roof, he noted with astonishment, was made entirely of stone, just like the walls. This was not a building of mud brick and timber beams, it was a mountain of carved megaliths. The walls themselves were not bare, but were covered in intricate carvings, turning every surface into a canvas of history and mythology. Each of the 12 great courts was surrounded by a colonnade of perfectly fitted white stone pillars, a forest of columns that would have dwarfed any temple in his native Greece. This was not a tomb in the conventional sense, nor was it merely a temple. It was the administrative and religious heart of the entire Egyptian kingdom. Later historians would confirm that the number of its great halls corresponded to the number of administrative districts, or nomes, that constituted ancient Egypt. This was the nation's capital building, a place where the governors, priests, and judges from every corner of the land would convene to conduct sacrifices, make offerings, and pass judgment on the most important matters of state. It was a symbol of national unity, built by the powerful pharaoh Amenemhat III of the 12th dynasty to be a microcosm of his kingdom, a perfectly ordered representation of the Egyptian state in stone. If such a structure had survived, it would be the single greatest archaeological treasure on the planet. It would be more than a monument, it would be a library. Its 3,000 rooms filled with hieroglyphs and paintings would represent a perfectly preserved archive of the political, religious, and social organization of an entire civilization at the height of its power. It would be a Rosetta Stone not of language, but of society itself. For centuries, this architectural titan stood as a testament to Egypt's golden age. Travelers came and went, leaving their own breathless accounts of its scale and beauty. It was a known quantity, a landmark as certain and as solid as the pyramids themselves. And then somehow it vanished from the face of the earth, leaving behind only the haunting, almost unbelievable words of the father of history. The search for this phantom wonder and the shocking rediscovery of what truly happened to it would become one of the greatest and most suppressed stories in the history of exploration.
Herodotus was not a lone voice crying in the wilderness. His staggering account of the Egyptian labyrinth was not an isolated tale, easily dismissed as a traveler's exaggeration. On the contrary, his testimony stands as the first in a chorus of classical writers who, over the next 500 years, would visit the site at Hawara and leave their own records of its magnificence. These accounts, from some of the most respected historians and geographers of the Greco-Roman world, form a powerful, unified consensus. They not only corroborate the labyrinth's existence, but add new layers of detail, painting an even more vivid picture of a structure that defied the imagination. In the 1st century BC, 400 years after Herodotus, the Sicilian Greek historian Diodorus Siculus made his own journey up the Nile. When he reached the labyrinth, he too was awestruck. While he confirmed the bewildering complexity of the passages, noting that once in, it is impossible to find one's way out again without difficulty, unless one lights upon a guide who is perfectly acquainted with it, it was the artistry of the building that truly captured his attention. He described entering the sacred enclosure to find a temple surrounded by columns, 40 to each side, a detail that speaks of its immense scale. But his most vivid description concerns the roof, which he confirms was made of a single stone, carved with panels and richly adorned with excellent paintings. This detail is crucial. Diodorus adds color and life to Herodotus's architectural description. We can now look up from the colonnaded courts, not at a plain stone ceiling, but at a vast monolithic canvas filled with vibrant paintings. He goes on to say that the temple contained memorials of the homeland of each of the kings, as well as of the temples and sacrifices carried out in it, all skillfully worked in paintings of the greatest beauty. This confirms the labyrinth's role as a national monument, a visual encyclopedia of the entire kingdom, with each of the gnomes represented through glorious artwork. It was a gallery of the nation's soul, executed on a scale that had no equal. A contemporary of Diodorus, the geographer Strabo, visited Egypt shortly after the Roman conquest in 30 BC. As a geographer, he was interested in the labyrinth's layout and function, and his account is that of a careful, methodical observer. He describes a large palace composed of as many palaces as there were formerly gnomes, directly linking the structure's design to the administrative divisions of Egypt. Like the others, he was amazed by the construction, particularly the roofing. He writes, "The most surprising circumstance is that the roofs of these dwellings consist of a single stone each, and that the covered ways to their whole range were roofed in the same manner with single slabs of stone of extraordinary size, without the intermixture of timber or of any other material." Strabo's emphasis on the monolithic stone slabs, used not just for the chambers but for all the covered passageways, reinforces the sheer audacity of the engineering. This was not just a building, it was a megalithic masterpiece. He adds a fascinating detail from his own exploration. On ascending the roof, there may be seen a stone field, thus composed of stones. This description of the roof as a vast, flat stone field would become a pivotal clue 2,000 years later, a single sentence that would ultimately unlock the entire mystery. Strabo, like Herodotus, was left with the impression of a building that was in a class of its own, calling it a work equal to the pyramids. A century later, in the 1st century AD, the Roman naturalist and historian Pliny the Elder compiled his encyclopedic Naturalis Historia. Though it is not certain he visited the labyrinth himself, he had access to all the accounts that had come before, and he added crucial new details about the materials used in its construction. He noted a surprising and opulent feature. The entrance and its columns were made of Parian marble, a brilliant white and highly prized marble from the Greek islands. The use of an expensive, imported material for the entrance speaks of a desire to create a truly breathtaking first impression. He contrasts this with the rest of the structure, which he states was built from Osman granite, a famously hard and durable red granite quarried in the far south of Egypt. This combination of materials, gleaming white marble at the entrance leading into a complex of powerful red granite, paints a picture of incredible wealth and aesthetic sophistication. Pliny also provides a date for its construction, attributing it to the reign of Pharaoh Amenemhat III around 1800 BC, and confirms its purpose as a temple complex dedicated to the sun god Ra. He too was convinced of its superiority, stating that Daedalus, the mythical builder of the Cretan labyrinth, used the Egyptian original as his model, but imitated only the 100th part of it. Other writers, like the Roman geographer Pomponius Mela, also mention the labyrinth, confirming its existence and its bewildering complexity. Taken together, these accounts from Herodotus, Diodorus Siculus, Strabo, Pliny the Elder, and others create an unbroken chain of testimony spanning half a millennium. They are remarkably consistent in their core details: a colossal structure at Hawara, adjacent to a pyramid, a design based on the gnomes of Egypt, a bewildering number of courts and chambers, and, most critically, a roof made of enormous single slabs of stone. This is not mythology. This is history, documented by the finest minds of the classical world. The evidence is overwhelming. The Labyrinth of Egypt was real. It was a wonder that, by the consensus of those who saw it, rivaled and even surpassed the pyramids. The question then is not whether it existed, but what secrets it held. And the greatest of those secrets, a mystery from the very beginning, was the one part of the labyrinth that no outsider was ever allowed to see. For all the wonders that Herodotus was permitted to witness in the Upper Labyrinth, the endless passages, the carved walls, the stone-roofed courts, there was a line he was not allowed to cross, a boundary between the known and the forbidden. His request to see the other half of the magnificent structure, the 1,500 chambers that lay hidden in the darkness beneath his feet, was met with a swift and absolute refusal from his Egyptian guides. Their answer, recorded in his histories, is one of the most tantalizing and significant moments in the entire story. He wrote that the Egyptian authorities were utterly unwilling to show them, providing a chillingly specific reason for the secrecy. The subterranean levels, they explained, contained the sacred burials of the kings who first constructed the labyrinth, and of the sacred crocodiles, the living incarnations of the regional god Sobek. This denial transforms the labyrinth from a mere architectural marvel into a profound mystery. From its very inception, the subterranean portion was a forbidden zone, a place of secrets deemed too sacred or perhaps too powerful for the eyes of an outsider. This act of concealment, this deliberate wall of silence erected by the ancient priests, established a pattern of secrecy that would echo with shocking precision 25 centuries later, when modern explorers finally stumbled upon the very threshold the father of history was turned away from. Let us dissect the reasons given for this secrecy. First, the tombs of the founding kings. The labyrinth was primarily the creation of the great 12th dynasty pharaoh, Amenemhat III. While his primary pyramid tomb stands adjacent to the site, the guide statement implies that other rulers, perhaps his predecessors or co-regents, who contributed to the grand project, were also interred in this subterranean necropolis. This would make the Lower Labyrinth one of the most important royal burial sites in Egypt, a sealed complex containing the pharaohs who presided over one of the nation's most prosperous and stable periods. The potential for discovery is immense. Unlike the plundered tombs in the Valley of the Kings, this underground complex might have remained sealed, its treasures and, more importantly, its historical records, untouched for millennia. What might these records contain? The tombs of kings were not just burial places, they were eternal archives, their walls covered in texts detailing the ruler's life, lineage, religious beliefs, and historical achievements. A sealed royal necropolis from the Middle Kingdom could contain information that would revolutionize our understanding of Egyptian history, potentially clarifying the succession of pharaohs, detailing military campaigns, or revealing religious doctrines that have been lost to time. The priests' refusal to allow Herodotus entry may have been born of a simple desire to protect the sanctity of their revered ancestors, or it could have been a calculated effort to control history, to keep a foundational narrative, literally written in stone, from being viewed and potentially questioned by the outside world. The second reason given is even more bizarre and evocative: the tombs of the sacred crocodiles. The labyrinth was located in the Fayum Oasis, the center of the cult of Sobek, the powerful and fearsome crocodile god. Sobek was associated with the Nile's fertility, military prowess, and the raw, untamable power of the pharaoh. Throughout the Fayum, crocodiles were raised in temples, adorned with jewels and worshipped as living gods. When they died, they were mummified with the same care and reverence afforded to high-ranking humans and buried in special cemeteries. The priest's statement that the subterranean labyrinth was a burial place for these sacred animals elevates the site's importance beyond even a royal necropolis. It suggests this was the central catacomb for the most sacred crocodiles in all of Egypt, the final resting place for the avatars of a primary state deity. The presence of thousands of mummified crocodiles, likely accompanied by rich burial goods and religious texts dedicated to the cult of Sobek, would make this an unparalleled discovery. It would provide a unique window into the practical and spiritual dimensions of Egyptian animal worship on a scale never before seen. But the combination of kings and crocodiles suggests something even deeper. The pharaoh was not just a king, he was a god on earth. In death, he was identified with Osiris, the god of the Underworld, but in life, his power was often equated with the ferocious strength of Sobek. The mingling of their tombs in this subterranean realm suggests a powerful syncretic ritual, a place where the divine power of the pharaoh and the divine power of the crocodile god were merged for eternity. The lower labyrinth may have been the ultimate crucible of royal and divine power, a place where the deepest mysteries of the Egyptian religion were performed and preserved. This forbidden knowledge, this nexus of royal and sacred power, was sealed off 2,500 years ago. The priests of Sobek guarded their secrets well. They understood that true power lies not just in what is seen, but in what is hidden. The upper labyrinth, with its dazzling courts and bewildering passages, was a display of earthly power designed to all mortals. But the true source of that power, the sacred heart of the kingdom, lay beneath, in the silent, unseen darkness. It was a secret the ancient world was never meant to know. And as we will see, it is a secret that the modern world, despite having rediscovered it, is still being forbidden from uncovering. The pattern of concealment, it seems, is as eternal as the stones themselves. How does a wonder of the world, a structure that Herodotus claimed surpassed the pyramids, simply vanish? For nearly 2,000 years after the last classical accounts, the Egyptian labyrinth faded from the tangible world into the realm of legend. Its location was never truly lost. Ancient texts clearly placed it in the Fayum Oasis at Hawara, next to the mud brick pyramid of its creator, Pharaoh Amenemhat III. But of the magnificent building itself, the 12 courts, the 3,000 rooms, the monolithic stone roof, nothing remained. The relentless sands of the desert had seemingly swallowed it whole, leaving a vast, empty, and silent expanse where a masterpiece once stood. It became a ghost story, a fantastic tale told by ancient Greeks, increasingly dismissed by later scholars as a fanciful exaggeration, a myth born of travelers' awe. The physical search for this phantom began in earnest in the late 19th century, an era of heroic pick-and-shovel archaeology. The man who took up the challenge was a figure who would come to define the very field of modern Egyptology, Sir William Matthew Flinders Petrie. A brilliant, obsessive, and astonishingly methodical archaeologist, Petrie arrived at Hawara in 1888, his mind set on solving the labyrinth mystery once and for all. Armed with the limited tools of his time, a small army of local laborers, hand tools, and his own formidable intellect, he began to systematically excavate the vast, flat plain of sand and debris that stretched to the south of Amenemhat's crumbling pyramid. What he uncovered seemed at first to be a stunning confirmation of the ancient accounts. Beneath the surface, Petrie's teams cleared away the sand to reveal an immense, artificially leveled plateau of limestone chips and stone fragments. The scale of this feature was breathtaking, measuring a staggering 304 meters by 244 meters, over 1,000 feet long and 800 feet wide. This man-made platform was larger than the footprint of the Great Temple Complex at Karnak, the largest religious building ever constructed. Scattered across this desolate expanse were the shattered remnants of its former glory, fragments of colossal granite statues, pieces of ornate columns, and hints of the grandeur that had so impressed Herodotus and Strabo. The location was correct, the scale was correct. Petrie was certain he had found the site of the lost labyrinth.
But this is where the discovery took a tragic and misleading turn. The surface of the plateau was a scene of utter devastation. It was a chaotic jumble of debris, a testament to centuries of destruction. Petrie found clear and abundant evidence that the site had been systematically plundered, used as a convenient, high-grade stone quarry during the later Ptolemaic and Roman periods. It appeared that the magnificent Oswin granite and fine white limestone of the labyrinth had been broken up, carted away, and recycled to build new cities and villas in the Fayum, most notably the nearby provincial capital of Arsinoe. The greatest wonder of Egypt had been cannibalized to build the mundane structures of a later age.
After a painstaking survey of the ruins, Petrie arrived at a conclusion that was both logical and heartbreaking. The massive stone plateau he had discovered, he declared, was not a part of the labyrinth itself, it was its foundation. The glorious 3,000-room structure described by the classical authors he announced to the world had been systematically demolished and carried away stone by stone until absolutely nothing was left but the footprint upon which it once stood. The great bed of stone chips was all that remained of the monolithic roof and carved walls. The labyrinth was gone, a victim of time, plunder, and the changing needs of civilization. For over a century, Petrie's conclusion became archaeological dogma. His immense authority and the seemingly irrefutable evidence of destruction on the surface closed the case. The labyrinth was officially declared lost forever. Textbooks were written and archaeological maps of Hawara were drawn, labeling the vast, empty plateau as the foundations of the labyrinth. The world accepted that the greatest architectural achievement of ancient Egypt had been erased from existence. This created what we can call the Petrie paradox. His conclusion was the product of a brilliant mind working with the best evidence available to him. He could only dig, and what his eyes saw on the surface told a clear and unambiguous story of destruction. His logic was sound, his evidence tangible, yet his conclusion was profoundly wrong. It was wrong not because of a flaw in his reasoning, but because of what he couldn't see. The limitations of 19th century technology had created a critical blind spot. He could see the surface, but he could not see what lay beneath it. In that blind spot, hidden from his view, the labyrinth lay waiting, perfectly preserved. Petrie's story is a powerful cautionary tale about the perceived finality of scientific knowledge. It demonstrates how even the most authoritative conclusions are built upon the technology and data available at the time. A single technological leap can shatter a century of accepted truth. The book that Flinders Petrie had so confidently closed on the mystery of the labyrinth was about to be violently torn open by a new generation of explorers armed with a technology that could finally see through stone.
For 100 years, the world accepted that the labyrinth was gone. The desolate stone plateau at Hawara had been seen as its tombstone, a final sad testament to a wonder that could never be recovered. But in 2008, a Belgian-Egyptian expedition arrived at the site with a new technology and a radical, almost heretical idea. The team, calling their project Mataha, the Arabic word for labyrinth, was spearheaded by the Belgian researcher Louis de Cordier. They looked at Petrie's century-old findings, read the same classical accounts, and asked a simple yet revolutionary question that would change everything. All the ancient writers, Herodotus, Diodorus, Strabo, had spoken with a particular sense of wonder about the labyrinth's roof. They didn't just mention it, they emphasized it as one of its most astonishing features. Herodotus wrote, "Over all this is a roof made of stone like the walls." Strabo was even more specific, noting that the roofs of the chambers and the long, covered passageways were spanned by single slabs of stone of extraordinary size, without the intermixture of timber or of any other material. De Cordier and his team seized on this crucial detail. What if Petrie, the giant of Egyptology, had made a fundamental error in interpretation? What if the enormous 1,000-foot-long stone plateau he identified was not the building's foundation, but its colossal, intact roof? The implications of this hypothesis were staggering. If it were true, it would mean that the labyrinth was not destroyed at all. It was merely hidden. The structure described by Herodotus had not been carried away stone by stone, it had simply been buried by the sands of time, with its massive stone roof protecting everything beneath it. The entire 3,000-room complex, including the forbidden subterranean levels that held the secrets of the founding kings, could still exist, perfectly preserved in the darkness beneath Petrie's foundation.
To test this incredible theory, the Mataha expedition brought a technology to Hawara that Petrie could only have dreamed of: ground-penetrating radar, or GPR. This non-invasive technique is the closest thing archaeology has to an X-ray machine for the Earth. It works by sending pulses of radar waves into the ground and then listening for the echoes that bounce back. Different materials, sand, mud brick, water, and solid stone, reflect the radar signal in different ways. By analyzing the time it takes for the echoes to return and their strength, scientists can create a detailed 3D map of buried structures without moving a single grain of sand. The Mataha team, in collaboration with geophysicists from Egypt's own National Research Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics, ANRAG, set up their equipment and began to systematically scan the area south of the pyramid, right on top of the very stone plateau that Petrie had declared the Labyrinth's final resting place. The results were immediate, and they were an archaeological bombshell. The scans revealed, with undeniable clarity, the presence of a massive, complex, and deeply buried structure. At a depth of between 8 and 12 meters, 26 to 39 feet, beneath the stone surface, the GPR detected a vast grid of vertical walls, forming a dense and highly organized network of chambers and corridors. The scale was gigantic, perfectly matching the ancient descriptions of a colossal building. Furthermore, the material of these buried walls registered a very high resistivity to the radar signals, a characteristic signature of dense, hard stone-like granite, the very material Pliny the Elder had described as forming the bulk of the structure. The official conclusion from the NRIAG geophysicists who analyzed the data was unequivocal. They stated that the scans confirmed, quote, the presence of a colossal archaeological feature below the labyrinth foundation zone of Petrie, which has to be reconsidered as the roof of the still existing labyrinth. The words were seismic. Petrie was wrong. Herodotus was right. The labyrinth had been found. The correlation between the ancient texts and the modern scans was too perfect, too precise to be a coincidence. Every key feature described by the historians who had walked its halls 2 millennia ago was now appearing on the radar screens of 21st century scientists. This was, without exaggeration, the most significant discovery in Egypt since Howard Carter opened the tomb of Tutankhamun in 1922. A lost wonder of the ancient world had been located. Its upper levels appeared to be largely intact, protected by their own massive roof. And with them came the tantalizing promise of the sealed, subterranean chambers, the forbidden zone that Herodotus was denied entry to. The world's media, archaeologists, and historians held their breath, waiting for the grand announcement from the Egyptian authorities that would rewrite history. But the announcement never came. Instead, there was only silence.
The rediscovery of the Egyptian labyrinth was not a fringe theory or a secret whispered among a handful of researchers. It was a formal, scientific finding conducted and verified by Egypt's own leading geophysical institution. The results of the Mataha expedition were officially published in the fall of 2008 in the Scientific Journal of the National Research Institute of Astronomy and Geophysics, the very body that had carried out the scans. The findings were also presented at a public lecture at Ghent University in Belgium, an event attended by the Belgian press. The evidence was on the record. The data was public. The discovery was real. And then, just as the news was beginning to ripple through the academic world, a wall of silence descended, as thick and impenetrable as the stone roof of the labyrinth itself. Shortly after the results were made public, the Supreme Council of Antiquities of Egypt, SCA, then under the absolute authority of its powerful and world-famous Secretary General, Dr. Zahi Hawass, issued a stunning directive. They put an immediate and total stop to all further communication regarding the Hawara discovery. The expedition team, including Louis de Cordier and the Egyptian scientists from NRIAG, was barred from speaking further about their findings. Plans for follow-up research, more detailed scans, or the first exploratory excavations were indefinitely frozen.
The greatest archaeological discovery of the 21st century was for all intents and purposes being actively and officially erased from the public record.
The official reason given for this unprecedented act of scientific suppression was as vague as it was alarming: Egyptian national security sanctions. This explanation makes almost no conventional sense. Major archaeological finds are a source of immense national pride and, more practically, a massive driver of tourism, a lifeblood of the Egyptian economy. A newly rediscovered labyrinth, a structure that Herodotus himself declared greater than the pyramids, would have been a global sensation. It would have sparked a new golden age of tourism, bringing incalculable revenue and international prestige to Egypt. Why would the state treat such a monumental cultural and economic asset not as a treasure but as a threat? The national security justification is a profound red flag, a term used by governments to shut down inquiry without providing a rational explanation. It suggests that what lies preserved in the darkness beneath the sands of Hawara is something so paradigm-shifting, so potentially disruptive to the established historical, cultural, or even religious narrative that the authorities would rather it remain buried and unknown. The questions it raises are deeply unsettling. Could the labyrinth contain a library of records from the Middle Kingdom that fundamentally challenges the accepted timeline of the pharaohs? Could its religious significance be of a nature that is politically or theologically sensitive in modern Egypt? Or is the sheer scale of the preserved structure and the immense cost and technical difficulty of excavating a waterlogged site of this magnitude a problem so large that it is simply easier to deny its existence than to confront it?
For 2 long years, Louis de Cordier and the Mataha team honored the official request for silence. They waited patiently, hoping that the Supreme Council of Antiquities would eventually organize a grand press conference and make the triumphant announcement themselves, taking full credit for the discovery. But by the summer of 2010, it became chillingly clear that the silence was not temporary. It was a permanent policy of suppression. The discovery was being deliberately buried, destined to fade back into obscurity just as it had 2 millennia before. In an act of scientific defiance, de Cordier decided he could no longer be complicit in the cover-up. He launched a website, labyrinthofegypt.com, and released the expedition's data, the official NRIAG report, and the stunning conclusions to the world. He ensured that the secret of Hawara, once rediscovered, would not be lost again to an official narrative of denial. The historical parallel is impossible to ignore, and it is what makes the story so compelling. 25 centuries ago, the priests of Sobek, the ancient guardians of the labyrinth, barred Herodotus from seeing the subterranean levels because they held the sacred secrets of the founding kings. Today, the modern team of scientists that prove those subterranean levels still exist has been officially silenced by the modern guardians of Egypt's antiquities. The forbidden knowledge of the ancients remains forbidden knowledge today. The Labyrinth of Hawara is not just a buried building, it is a buried secret. And the guardians of that secret, both ancient and modern, have proven themselves equally unwilling to let it see the light of day. But Hawara is not the only place in Egypt with secrets under the sand. To understand the full context of this suppression and to grasp what might truly be at stake, we must turn our attention 300 kilometers north, to the most famous and intensely studied archaeological site on the planet, the Giza Plateau. For it is there that we find irrefutable proof of what the ancients were capable of building in the depths, and where even more sensational claims of a hidden world are now emerging.
Before we can begin to entertain the most sensational new claims about what might lie miles deep beneath the Giza Plateau, we must first establish a ground truth. Is there any hard, physical, undeniable evidence of complex, multi-leveled structures engineered deep within the Giza bedrock? The answer is an emphatic and resounding yes, and it is found in one of the most bizarre, enigmatic, and least understood locations on the entire plateau, the Osiris shaft. This is not a radar anomaly, a controversial theory, or an esoteric interpretation of ancient texts. It is a real, tangible place, an astonishing feat of engineering hidden deep beneath the stone causeway that connects the pyramid of Khafre to its valley temple. For centuries, its existence was the stuff of legend, first hinted at by Herodotus himself. He recounted a tale told to him by Egyptian priests of secret underground vaults built by Pharaoh Khufu, claiming the pharaoh's tomb lay on a mysterious island, surrounded by water brought in through a man-made channel from the Nile. This story was long dismissed as folklore, another of Herodotus's fanciful tales. The shaft was rediscovered and partially explored in the 20th century, but it was perpetually flooded and its true nature remained a mystery. It was only in the late 1990s and early 2000s that a team led by Dr. Zahif Hawass undertook the arduous task of pumping out the groundwater and fully excavating its depths, revealing a structure more mysterious and profound than anyone had imagined. The descent into the Osiris shaft is a journey into another world, a layered underworld that defies any simple explanation. The entrance is an unassuming vertical shaft cut directly into the limestone bedrock. The first level, about 10 meters or 30 feet down, opens into a stark, empty chamber. There are no carvings, no hieroglyphs, no decorations of any kind, an almost unheard of feature in Egyptian funerary architecture. This profound emptiness is the first clue that this is no ordinary tomb. Its purpose was something different, something more primal.
From the floor of this chamber, another shaft leads deeper into the earth. At the second level, nearly 20 meters or 60 feet below the surface, the structure becomes more complex. Here, a central room gives way to 6 smaller chambers or niches, carved with precision out of the living rock. Inside 2 of these dark niches lie enormous monolithic sarcophagi fashioned from black granite. Like the chamber above, they are completely bare, devoid of any inscriptions that might tell us who they were intended for or when they were made. Their sheer size, weighing an estimated 40 tons each, and the incredible difficulty of lowering them down a narrow shaft and maneuvering them into these subterranean rooms is a testament to an almost unbelievable feat of engineering. But the true secret of the shaft, the confirmation of Herodotus's legend, lies one level deeper. A final, perilous descent takes you to a depth of 30 meters, nearly 100 feet, straight down into the Giza bedrock. Here, you emerge into a scene straight out of mythology. The lowest chamber is flooded with crystal-clear groundwater, creating a subterranean lake. In the center of this dark, still water stands a rectangular stone platform, an artificial island perfectly matching the legend recorded by Herodotus 2.5 millennia ago. And resting on this island, partially submerged in the silent water, is a third colossal granite sarcophagus weighing an estimated 10 to 15 tons. The purpose of this extraordinary place remains a subject of intense debate. Dr. Hawass, who excavated it, believes it is a symbolic tomb for Osiris, the god of the Underworld, a powerful ritual site where ceremonies connecting the deceased pharaoh to the afterlife were performed. Others suggest it may be a lost royal burial, perhaps a secret tomb for an unknown pharaoh, or even for Khufu himself, as the legend suggests. A more radical theory posits that the shaft, with its megalithic, uninscribed sarcophagi, is far older than the pyramids themselves, a remnant of a preceding culture that revered this spot as a literal gateway to the underworld, a place of immense primordial power that the pyramid builders later co-opted. Regardless of its true purpose, the Osiris shaft provides us with an irrefutable proof of concept. It demonstrates, without any ambiguity, that the builders of Giza possessed both the motivation and the technical capability to undertake massive, complex engineering projects deep within the limestone bedrock. Skeptics of vast underground networks often argue from a position of practicality,
questioning the ability of ancient cultures to perform such feats. The Osiris shaft silences that argument.
It is the physical precedent for everything that follows. It shifts the debate from could they have built extensive structures under the ground to a much more tantalizing question, what else did they build? This question leads us to another, even more extensive subterranean world that may exist at Giza. A vast network of natural caves, tunnels, and chambers that some researchers believe was known to and used by the pyramid builders. The exploration of this cave system and the official reaction to it provides another crucial piece of the puzzle. The story of its modern discovery centers on the British historical writer Andrew Collins. Following clues left in the 200-year-old memoirs of a British diplomat and the esoteric prophecies of the American psychic Edgar Cayce, Collins pinpointed a potential entrance on the Giza Plateau. In 2008, he and his team gained access to a little-known rock-cut tomb on the northern cliff face, west of the Great Pyramid, a tomb cataloged as NC2 but known colloquially as the Tomb of the Birds. Inside this unassuming tomb, they found a fissure leading into a natural cave system. Collins described his exploration as a perilous journey into a forgotten underworld, crawling through hundreds of meters of passages filled with unseen pits and hollows, colonies of bats and venomous spiders. He documented a massive complex of natural caves, some of which appeared to have been artificially widened or shaped in antiquity, suggesting they were not just known but actively used. Collins connected this subterranean world to the ancient Egyptian concept of the Duat, the underworld through which the deceased pharaoh had to journey to achieve rebirth. The announcement of this discovery was met with a swift and severe rebuttal from the Egyptian authorities. Dr. Zahi Hawass issued a public statement flatly denying the existence of any significant cave system. He declared that what Collins had explored was simply a well-documented, late-period rock-cut tomb cataloged and studied for decades. He stated unequivocally, "I can say that there is no underground cave complex at this site. We know everything about this site as it currently stands." He dismissed Collins' claims as unscientific pseudo-archaeology designed to create headlines. This official denial, however, has not aged well. As we will see, the very same cave system that Collins explored and Hawass dismissed has now become central to the latest, most shocking claims of subterranean structures at Giza. The Osiris shaft proved what could be built. The cave controversy proves that what might already exist is a battleground of denial and discovery. Together, they set the stage for the next great leap in technology, one that would move beyond the bedrock and into the very heart of the pyramids themselves.
While debates have raged for decades about what lies under the Giza Plateau, a quiet and profound revolution has been taking place inside the pyramids themselves. Since 2015, an international, multidisciplinary mission called ScanPyramids has been applying the principles of 21st century particle physics to probe the secrets of these 4,500-year-old structures. Their work has proven, beyond any doubt, that even the most studied monument on Earth still holds secrets so vast they can hide in plain sight. The project's primary and most revolutionary tool is a technology called muography, or cosmic ray muon radiography. The concept is as elegant as it is powerful. The Earth is constantly being bombarded by high-energy particles from deep space, called cosmic rays. When these primary rays strike the atoms in our upper atmosphere, they create a shower of secondary particles that rain down upon the surface of the planet. Among these particles are muons. Muons are like heavy electrons. They are harmless, ubiquitous, and incredibly penetrating. They can pass through hundreds of meters of solid rock, but they are gradually absorbed or deflected along the way. The ScanPyramids team realized they could harness this natural cosmic shower to, in effect, X-ray a pyramid. By placing highly sensitive muon detectors in known chambers inside or around a pyramid, scientists can track the trajectories and count the number of muons arriving from every direction.
If more muons arrive from a particular direction than expected, it means they passed through less dense material, an empty space, a void, rather than solid stone. It is a way to see the invisible, to map the hollows within a solid mass using a natural, harmless source of radiation from the cosmos. Using this and other non-invasive technologies like infrared thermography, the ScanPyramids team has made two monumental, peer-reviewed, and scientifically undeniable discoveries inside the Great Pyramid of Khufu, shattering the traditional model of the structure. Their first major finding, confirmed and detailed in early 2023, was the existence of a hidden corridor located directly behind the massive, gabled limestone beams, known as chevrons, that sit above the pyramid's original descending entrance on its north face.
This void, officially named the ScanPyramids North Face Corridor, or SPNFC, is approximately 9 meters, 30 feet long, and over 2 meters, nearly 7 feet tall. Its ceiling is gabled or V-shaped, a design frequently used by Egyptian architects to relieve the immense weight of the masonry above and prevent the collapse of passages below. The purpose of this corridor is now the subject of intense debate among Egyptologists. The official position, voiced by Mustafa Waziri, the current head of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, is that this corridor is purely a structural feature, an engineering necessity designed to protect the descending passage from the crushing weight of the pyramid. But others, including the formidable Dr. Zahi Hawass, have speculated it could be much more. Hawass has gone on record stating he believes this corridor is a discovery of the utmost importance, suggesting it could be a tantalizing clue that leads to the real, undiscovered burial chamber of Pharaoh Khufu, a tomb that has eluded searchers for centuries. As significant as the North Face corridor is, it was dwarfed by the team's next announcement, a discovery so extraordinary it was published in the prestigious scientific journal Nature in 2017. Using their muon detectors, they revealed the presence of a second, much larger void located deep within the pyramid's superstructure. Situated directly above the magnificent Grand Gallery, this colossal empty space was named the ScanPyramids Big Void, or SPBV. Its dimensions are simply staggering. It is at least 30 to 40 meters, or 98 to 130 feet long, with a cross-section comparable to the Grand Gallery itself, which is over 8 meters high. To put that in perspective, this is an empty space the size of a regional jet's fuselage, hidden inside what was previously thought to be a nearly solid mass of stone for 4,500 years.
The discovery was so unbelievable that the scientific team went to extreme lengths to verify it, knowing it would be met with intense skepticism. The Big Void was not detected by one team, but independently confirmed by 3 different teams of physicists from 3 different institutions: Nagoya University, Keck in Japan, and CEA in France, using 3 different types of muon detection technology: nuclear emulsion films, scintillator rotoscopes, and gas detectors, placed in different locations within the pyramid. The results were identical. The Big Void is real. Its existence is not a matter of debate. It is a matter of scientific fact. These 2 discoveries have fundamentally and permanently shattered the traditional model of the Great Pyramid. It is not a solid structure with a few well-understood passages leading to a central tomb. It is a complex honeycombed building containing enormous, intentionally constructed, and completely inaccessible empty spaces whose functions are utterly unknown. Why would the builders go to the immense trouble of creating such a massive void, only to seal it off from the world forever with no apparent entrance or exit? Was it a constructional feature, a kind of internal ramp or assembly hall? Was it a chamber for complex ritual purposes, a symbolic representation of a part of the underworld? Or was it designed to hold something, the pharaoh's true burial,
his treasures, or sacred texts that was never ever meant to be found. The confirmed existence of the Big Void is a game changer for our entire story. It provides the crucial context for the even more incredible claims that have recently emerged from Giza. It proves that our knowledge of the pyramids is radically and embarrassingly incomplete. If a structure as large as the Big Void can lie hidden inside the most famous monument on the planet for 4.5 millennia, it forces us to ask a deeply unsettling question. What else might be hidden, not just within the pyramid, but in the bedrock far, far below it?
On March 15, 2025, a team of Italian researchers held a press conference that sent shockwaves through the worlds of archaeology, geophysics, and alternative history. The team, operating under the name the Khafre Research Project, unveiled a set of findings so extraordinary, so far beyond the accepted paradigm of Egyptology, that they seem to belong more to science fiction than to academic research. Led by academics Corrado Malonga from the University of Pisa and Filippo Biondi of the University of Strathclyde, they claim to have discovered not just a new chamber or a hidden tunnel, but a vast, deeply buried complex of megalithic structures beneath the Pyramid of Khafre, the second largest pyramid on the Giza Plateau. Their claims were not based on excavation or conventional geophysical tools like GPR, which have limited depth penetration. Instead, they were derived from a novel and highly complex technological method they call synthetic aperture radar Doppler tomography. This technique represents a radical departure from traditional subsurface imaging. It does not attempt to send powerful radar signals deep into the Earth from the surface. Instead, it uses data from advanced SAR satellites orbiting 400 miles above the planet to detect and analyze infinitesimal microvibrations on the pyramid's surface. The underlying theory is as ingenious as it is controversial. The entire Giza Plateau, like the rest of our planet, is constantly vibrating due to ambient seismic energy, the natural low-frequency hum of the Earth. As these subtle vibrations travel up through the bedrock, their characteristics are altered by any structures or voids they encounter. A solid block of limestone will vibrate differently than a hollow chamber or a vertical shaft. The Khafre team claims that by analyzing the tiny Doppler shifts, changes in frequency, in the satellite radar signals reflecting off the vibrating surface of the pyramid, they can create a 3D tomographic model of what lies deep below. In effect, they claim their method makes the limestone bedrock transparent, allowing them to see the subterranean architecture by listening to its vibrations.
The images they produced with this method are nothing short of breathtaking. If they are to be believed, they represent the discovery of a lost world. The team claims to have identified a series of massive, geometrically precise, and seemingly artificial structures located at depths previously thought impossible to explore. Their list of discoveries reads like a catalog from a forgotten civilization. First, inside the base of the Khafre pyramid itself, above the known subterranean chamber, they identified 5 large vertical hollow spaces which they likened to the Djed columns of Egyptian mythology, the symbolic representation of the backbone of the god Osiris. But the true bombshell lay in the bedrock beneath the pyramid. They announced the detection of 8 enormous hollow cylindrical tubes or wells penetrating vertically into the earth to a staggering depth of 648 meters. That's 2,126 feet, or nearly half a mile straight down. Each of these massive vertical shafts, they claim, is surrounded by a spiraling pathway, like a gigantic staircase winding its way down into the abyss.
And at the bottom of this half-mile descent, the shafts are said to terminate in 2 colossal cubic chambers. Each chamber, according to their data, measures approximately 80 meters on each side.
a cube of empty space the size of a city block, buried thousands of feet beneath the desert sands. The team's conclusion was as grand and as shocking as their data. They believe they have found definitive evidence of a massive, interconnected subterranean infrastructural complex, a possible underground city. They have gone so far as to connect their findings to ancient esoteric texts like the Emerald Tablets of Thoth, which speak of a mythical underworld beneath Giza known as the Halls of Amenti, a place of ancient knowledge and power. If their data is accurate, this is not just a new discovery. It is a revelation that would force the complete and total rewriting of human history. It would suggest the presence of a civilization with extraordinary, almost unbelievable technological capabilities operating at Giza thousands of years before the pharaohs. It would mean that the pyramids we see on the surface are, as the researchers themselves stated, quote, merely the tip of the iceberg of a colossal underground infrastructural complex. It would confirm the wildest legends of a lost world, a subterranean kingdom hidden beneath the most sacred site of the ancient Egyptians. The claims are spectacular, but they were not made in a scientific vacuum. They were released into a world of rigorous academic scrutiny, and the backlash was immediate and ferocious.
In the world of science, extraordinary claims demand extraordinary evidence. The Khafre SAR project's stunning announcement of a half-mile-deep subterranean city at Giza was immediately met with a tidal wave of skepticism, criticism, and outright condemnation from the mainstream scientific and Egyptological communities. The backlash was as fierce as the claims were sensational, creating a deep and seemingly unbridgeable chasm between the Italian research team and the established academic world. The single most significant criticism leveled against the project is its complete lack of formal peer review for its most dramatic claims. In science, new discoveries are not validated by press conferences or YouTube videos. They are validated by publishing a detailed paper in a reputable academic journal. This paper is then rigorously scrutinized by other independent experts in the field, who check the methodology, analyze the data, and challenge the conclusions. Only after it has survived this trial by fire is a finding considered scientifically sound. The Khafre team bypassed this fundamental step entirely for their 2025 announcement, a move that, for many scientists, was enough to dismiss the claims out of hand as pseudo-archaeology. The response from leading Egyptologists was swift and brutal. Dr. Zahi Hawass, never one to mince words, publicly rejected the findings as completely wrong and baseless, calling them fabrications propagated by individuals with no expertise in ancient Egyptian civilization or the history of the pyramids. He and other experts pointed out that decades of previous geophysical surveys at Giza, using proven methods like gravimetry and conventional radar, had found no evidence whatsoever of such massive, deep structures. The technology itself came under intense fire. Professor Lawrence Conyers, a leading expert in the use of ground-penetrating radar for archaeology, stated bluntly it is simply not possible for SAR signals from a satellite to penetrate dense limestone to the depths claimed by the team. He called the idea of an underground city a huge exaggeration. Other critics have suggested that the team's novel method of interpreting surface microvibrations is unproven and highly susceptible to misinterpretation.
The complex geology of the Giza Plateau, with its natural fissures, faults, water table, and varying rock densities, could easily create data artifacts, patterns in the noise that the team's algorithms have mistaken for artificial structures. The deep vertical shafts could be imaging errors, and the horizontal layers could simply be natural bedding planes in the limestone. Adding fuel to the fire of skepticism are the backgrounds of some of the researchers involved. It was quickly pointed out by critics that one of the project's lead scientists, Corrado Malanga, is also a well-known figure in Italian ufology, who has published extensive and controversial research on alien abduction theories. While his work on that subject is separate from his academic research in organic chemistry, critics have used it to question the scientific objectivity and credibility of the entire Khafre project, suggesting a predisposition towards fringe ideas. The research team has pushed back hard against this barrage of criticism. They argue that their methodology is not fantasy, but a revolutionary new application of existing technology. They point to a paper they published in the peer-reviewed journal Remote Sensing in 2022, which used a similar technique to identify smaller, previously unknown voids inside the Great Pyramid. They argue that this earlier peer-reviewed work validates their fundamental approach, and that their 2025 findings are simply the result of refining the technique and applying it to the bedrock below. They maintain that their technology is a breakthrough that can see what conventional methods cannot. As Malanga himself defiantly stated, this isn't a theory that needs more confirmation. These are photos. This conflict has become a classic battle for the narrative of history. The scientific establishment, represented by figures like Hawass and Conyers, demands rigorous peer-reviewed evidence based on established methods. They see the Khafre project as a dangerous example of pseudo-archaeology that misleads the public and undermines the credibility of their field.
The challengers, Malanga and Biondi, see themselves as innovators with a disruptive new technology, and they view the establishment as a dogmatic gatekeeping system, unwilling to entertain revolutionary ideas that threaten the status quo. And so, we are left standing at the edge of a profound abyss of uncertainty. Our journey has taken us from the sun-scorched sands of Hawara to the deepest, darkest recesses of the Giza Plateau. We began with the words of Herodotus, describing a lost labyrinth that surpassed the pyramids, a structure whose rediscovery in 2008 was met not with celebration, but with an official wall of silence. We then traveled to Giza, where we found hard, physical proof of a subterranean reality. We descended 100 feet into the bedrock, to the flooded chamber of the Osiris shaft, a place that proves complex, multi-leveled construction deep underground is not a theory, but a fact. We navigated the controversy surrounding the vast natural cave systems, a potential underworld known to and perhaps even engineered by the ancients. And we looked inside the Great Pyramid itself, where the peer-reviewed, undeniable science of the ScanPyramids project has revealed colossal, sealed-off voids, secrets hidden in plain sight for 4,500 years. Each of these discoveries, each of these threads of evidence, proves one thing beyond any doubt. The ground beneath Egypt is not solid, and our understanding of its greatest monuments is far from complete. And now, a new controversial technology has presented us with images of something else entirely, something deeper and more profound than we ever dared to imagine. A potential city of shafts and chambers, reaching nearly half a mile into the earth. Is this the ultimate secret of the pharaohs? A legacy from a long-lost civilization that predates the pyramids themselves? Is it the mythical halls of Amenti, the real-world inspiration for the Egyptian underworld? Or is it a ghost in the machine, a phantom born from controversial data and wishful thinking? We have proven that the ground beneath the pyramids is not empty. We have proven that the pyramids themselves hold secrets. The only question left is how deep do they go?